And so, moving on this thread. Are we good? Okay. Following this thread and through that, I mean, just Africa certainly is on the brink. And it is certainly now or never on many levels. And this concept of Mr. Boulot's as payments and energy and the blockchain being fairly inseparable, or at least complementing each other extremely well, is something we're going to tackle a little bit here. I'm going to be adding most of the blockchain stuff along with Anne, but we have other people, these gentlemen who are in various forms of finance and payments and regulation, and we're going to take the conversation to a little bit of a different place for our second panel. So why don't we just go to our panelists introducing themselves and give us a minute of what you do and who you are.
Okay. Hi, I'm Anne Camarillo. I'm president and CEO of Bolero Global, and we're a global mobile payment scheme. We connect any source of funds that's legal in a country to all merchants, focusing on cash replacement. We're a cloud-based next-generation payment system, and I look at blockchain as the next gen of next gen, so that's why I'm here. My background quickly, I was in payments for a long time. I was CEO of Maestro and Cirrus at MasterCard and did a variety of things there over my 20 years. And then before then was in telephony. So this is a nice combination for me, mobile payments. Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Thibault Verbiest. I'm partner with the law firm Gaulle, Fleurance and Associés in Paris and Brussels. We've been involved in the blockchain regulations for I would say, as far as I'm concerned, 3 years for the firm over the last year. And so we've been involved in understanding or trying to understand the legal implications of the blockchain, to what extent current regulations or future regulations might be applicable to blockchain activities. And we're going to start now, that's official impact study for the French Copyright Office, which has actually launched a public legal tender that we want to assess precisely to assess the impact or potential impact of blockchain on the activities and intellectual property in general.
It's fantastic.
My name is Jones Amegbor, founder and CEO of Agentic Group, trading under the trademark PayAngel. We are an African-focused payments institution. We are, of course, regulated, so we haven't touched Bitcoin or any digital currency
Not yet.
because regulations would not allow us to do that. But during the previous conversation, there were a lot of talk about all the problems that we have in Africa. And everyone recognizes that there's consensus about it. But yet, when businesses are set up, they basically go for a generic product that suits other markets other than Africa. And this is where we want to position ourselves. So although we are licensed to be a payment institution everywhere in the world, we want to focus on Africa and create specific use cases for Africa.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Damien Guermonprez. I'm the CEO of Lemonway, the first French fintech. We are a payment institution too. We are covering 30 countries. The truth is that we are working on 20 European countries, in addition to one country in Africa, Mali. And we have 2 million customers in Europe and 1 million in Mali.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks. Now, I want to, Jones, I'm going to start with you because this evening is about Africa. It's about France. It's about Africa. It's about the EU. Africa and the EU, you're well familiar with. Maybe not France as much, but based on Monsieur Boulot's comments, and I'm paraphrasing right now. Africa, as you just noted, has unique needs when it comes to these sorts of applications. I'd like you to address what you feel those needs are, not necessarily how you've addressed them technologically, we don't need to go into that, but what you feel that they really are and what needs to be overcome or, and sometimes just acknowledged. And then, Anne, I would like you to talk with your experience in emerging markets, the same question.
Well, talking about the needs of Africa, during the previous panel discussion, you talked about the bus scenario where payments are delivered via envelope, and there's an article somewhere that says about 75% of payments in Africa are delivered via that mode. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's not far from the truth. We have low penetration of internet in Africa, and of course there are scores of unbanked people in Africa. So there's a population of about 1 billion. Only 1.3% are properly banked. Yet if you look at mobile, over 350 million of that have access to mobile. So you can see that there's a shift, there's a disproportionate use of the services. So for us, we're looking at mobile as the next development phase of Africa. Not necessarily in its current form, because you have mobile money, which of course, at this stage, no one knows who is picking up the cost, and the cost is transferred to the end user. But the end user wants the money, so why penalize them? So although we see mobile phone usage as the next phase, we do believe that it should be in a different form, and that's basically what we are looking at. Not only mobile, we're also looking at card payments as well, because there are technologies out there that deliver real-time but offline solutions, which of course meets the African need because of the low penetration of internet. And I think it was one of your panelists who sat right here, who said, Richard, he basically said payments, just lost the chain of thought, but payments in Africa, there are problems with card payments or other forms of payment. So they would not look at consumers. They're basically focusing on businesses. But then most of the payment goes to individuals, and that is where we want to make the difference.
So you see that being the opportunity. Okay.
That's
so Damien, I'm sorry, I asked you to say something, but I want to hear about Mali just on the heels of that, then come back to you. Damien, so does that concur with your experiences in Mali? I mean, what have you found there?
Well, can I start again with France and Europe? When I just heard a politician saying that in Africa, perhaps the need will be new, and we may use something coming from nowhere. I don't know. I did not understand. In fact, do you realize that the same generation of politicians were not capable of building a payment for Europe? It's funny today to see someone who says, we will invent something new for Africa. So why this kind of generation was not capable of creating a payment for Europe?
Perhaps they have better tools now.
Well,
who knows? I don't really want to get into a statement about politicians, but...
Okay, do you realize that we are all working here in Europe using payment cards that are issued by MasterCards and Visa? Okay? Do you realize that here, I mean, we have a lady who was clever enough to buy all the debit card schemes in Europe because all our local markets were too small to create a pan-European card payments. So we Europeans have lost the battle of the credit card, the payment cards, the debit cards. Do we want again to lose the battle of the mobile payment? Well, there is on one side PayPal, and the other was on the other side Chinese. And someone said just, we should create something new. Well, why not? But how can you compete against 6 million? I mean, WeChat and Alipay, they all have 600 million wallets. 600 millions, okay? In Europe, how many do we have? I'm the leader. We have 3 million. This is ridiculous. Okay?
Well, what would be your plan to address that?
Well, at least to work on a pan-European scale. That's what we did with SEPA. So thank you, the politicians. At least we have Europe now. We can try to work on a pan-European level.
But you have a foothold in Africa too, so
but don't believe that this will come from Bitcoin. You spoke about Bitcoin.
Well,
I heard about a lot.
Let me just stop you.
I heard a lot about
I actually
Bitcoin,
am not,
and
well,
this was ridiculous.
I am not necessarily an advocate of Bitcoin.
This was ridiculous because I've been asked by the French regulator to stop working with Bitcoin marketplace because you did not prevent mafia hackers to use Bitcoin.
Oh, no, hold on. Now I have to stop you because actually that's really uninformed.
I'm from the real world.
No, that's
I'm
actually...
coming from the real world, making money, developing my own company.
That's actually a very uninformed position. But I'll just say it, I'll just stop it at that.
I'm the French guy, so I'm supposed to be very arrogant and...
it's okay.
and frank.
I'm from New York, and I'm just as arrogant as Frank. But that being said, that actually, I understand your position, but it wasn't necessarily reflective of where the truth is. And I'm not necessarily a Bitcoin advocate. I'm an advocate of tokenizing and securitizing new assets.
Me too.
That's different from Bitcoin.
I agree.
So that being said, you told me nothing about Mali, which I would still like to know about.
Mali. I need to tell you the truth. I've never been. We are doing. We've been doing business with Africans, many African countries, in fact. We are based in Montreuil, which is the second city of Mali, and frankly, we never made money.
Okay.
So my only problem with Africa is that we have full of entrepreneurs. We were very happy to open 100 million wallets without asking for it. I mean, frankly, it came suddenly like a good surprise. But how to make money?
Okay, but you don't know much about Mali, but how did you get there then? And what's stopping you at this point from moving into other African nations?
Yes, very good question. So first we were created to launch mobile payment because we were fed up with this credit card, the bank cards. But then we realized that it was not possible to succeed here in Europe. Nobody wants to use the mobile to pay the restaurants. Not yet. So we changed, and we were very lucky because the regulator here is asking the marketplaces, the new sharing economy, to use escrow accounts. All these new players cannot keep the money, they cannot collect the money and to keep the money on their bank account. They need a third party, so we are the third party. We are like a tower of control to make sure that the crowdfunding platforms are working well. Now, so we shifted to this new business, and at the same time, using the same technology, an entrepreneur in Mali was successful commercially. And then we said we will create, and we did create a subsidiary in Dakar, Senegal, and trying to get this license to cover UMOA. But as soon as you deal with money, you're always fighting against people who want to steal the money you have. And it's very difficult to meet with the regulator requirements in Africa. For example, we have 3,000 agents in Mali, 750 kiosks, we are competing against Orange Money. Most of the people who are asking for a mobile payment account, they don't have a passport. You don't do the KYC properly. So we could not do it on our own, and we ask a bank to do that locally, which is the subsidiary of Attijari Wafa Bank. And so, in short, here we make money, there we test, we learn, but we don't make money.
Okay.
And we don't see the future.
Okay, and you have a lot of experience in emerging markets and payments, so what do you think about that?
Well, I think there are a couple of big challenges in mobile money in Africa and in Middle East and South Asia and well, everywhere in emerging markets. The first one has to do with what is mobile money used for, and right now it's principally used for P2P. So people will get money into an account, they'll send it.
That's peer-to-peer, right?
Person to person.
Person to
Excuse
person.
me, person to person, and they'll get money, and once a month, or maybe twice a month, if the mom is lucky, she'll get a payment from the son that's working wherever he's working. That's normally how it goes, right? So that money is sent P2P, and then they've got this money in this account that they've either had to go put it in there, and then it just sits there, and there's no place for them to use it otherwise. And I know Damien's creating a lot of these places to use it, but it's, how does all of that get started? So the first thing you've got is that the main use is person to person, and it's hard to get other places to use it. The whole driver of a brand is where can you use it, right? Does it give you what you want? But in mobile money in particular, there are two things that I've found that are limitations or that are holding it down. One is this whole concept of interoperability. Everything right now is being created as a closed loop. So Damien goes and he sets up a really great system, and then he goes and he sells it to the merchants and he signs up the merchants. But he has to do it for his, Orange Money has to go do it for theirs. And for a merchant, it's a lot of pressure, right? And that's only the current electronically accepting merchants, and how many other are out there. Okay, so now you get to the second phase, which is what Damien was talking about with these agents, which is cash in. If you want to have money into an account, we need to get electronic deposits created. And to do that, we need to work with the governments, we need to create policy, we need to have as much salary and government benefits and cash in to be electronified. Because that's what's going to drive the whole system, is to get money put on the accounts, make sure that there's places for people to use them, and make sure that it's efficient for everyone all around, right? So the merchants need to get a payment guarantee. The merchants need to connect simply once. People need to be able to, as you just said, and by the way, cash in is ugly. I mean, there's a reason why cash businesses are no fun to do. If anyone's ever done an ATM business, it's ugly because you got to deal with all that cash in there. You got to count it. It's dirty. It could be stolen. It could be, it could be counterfeit. It could be all those things. And so cash in has its own tricky points too. And every one of Damien's agents is probably a really good guy, but he also could be there knifing him in the back, right? So how do you create a reliable cash in system in a non-bank environment, and how do you make sure you're compliant? So all of those things are just the realities of the way this works. So it's figuring out how you figure out you can get to places that are relevant and meaningful for where people live every day, right? How did cards become preferred in the banked population? Well, in debit, the way that cards became preferred in the banked population was it was started to be used in supermarkets because that's where people live. What percentage of what you do every day is supermarkets? Here you call it petrol, right? So if you can go gas up, and if you can go buy your groceries, not your fancy meal out that you may do once a month, but where you eat every day, where you go to buy your supermarkets. And then you expand from there to pharmacies and dry cleaning and those things. Now that's the banked population. We need to find those same merchant correlations for where people every day live that are unbanked. Right? And so how do we work with them? They buy groceries somewhere, right? They maybe don't have petrol because they don't go to petrol stations because they don't have their own car. We need to get to them where their transport is. So for me, it's finding what are those killer apps, that's what I call them, use cases that are relevant for consumers that you don't have to do marketing for, that it's just such an unmet need. Now there's one other unmet need I would say that I've found in merchant use cases, and that is e-commerce. There are a lot of people out there that want to buy online, that want to shop online, that don't have a bank account. And even those who are banked and have a credit card have difficulty with their bank allowing them to be able to purchase online. So that's a big unmet need. Other than that, I would say it's making payments, either to the government, to the schools, to electricity, to fuel, making payments to all of these places. That's a big deal, helping people do their lives more easily. I can tell you, we started in Afghanistan. Crazy place to start, by the way. But we started in Afghanistan because we were building our platform, and if it didn't work, I figured no one would know. You wouldn't know that it didn't work in Afghanistan. I could get away with it. But it did work. And so we've learned, things that I just wasn't expecting. We have 12,000 agents in Afghanistan, in a place where, how do you handle money and how do you create that trust relationship and the process with those agents and collecting cash and all that. Anyway, those were the things that I would say I found. So our first application in Afghanistan was e-commerce, believe it or not. There was just a big unmet need there. And then from there it was government payments and taxes, because right now Afghanistan is a completely donor-dependent country. Their entire economy is based on all the different foreign countries' aid going into it, or the forces that were there creating, an expat economy. So the first place I went to when I arrived in Kabul was to the mayor's office, and he said, I need to create an income stream. I need revenue. Can you help me collect revenue? And, it's not a popular way to start, so you have to try a few other things, but being able to do tax collections was a big deal. So I'm sorry if I'm going on too long, but it's killer apps, making sure you've got it easy for people to do, and more than anything, cash in and cash out, right? So it's cash in, it needs to be electronified, and cash out, well, you don't want to cash out, but you want to make sure that they can use it where they need to use it. And then people will actually be interested in it.
Well, I wanted to get into something. Thank you for that. That was very insightful, actually. And I wanted to get back to Thibault on something mentioned earlier that I think ties into what you just said, and that's the KYC issue. I think that's inherent in your planning there, and I think you said it outright, Damien. So Thibault, and let's talk specifically about France and the EU in a broader sense right now. How are you looking as a lawyer and as a person who's dealing with regulation, dealing with the KYC issue in emerging markets, but let's be specific to Africa if you can be. But in general, in emerging markets, if you can't talk about Africa itself.
Specific to Africa, I'm not sure.
Right, but in emerging markets then.
Yeah, but in that field of financial services regulations, many African countries try to be EU compatible in terms of regulations. So the standards, the regulatory standards are more or less the same in many. I'm talking about Africa here because there are many African countries with legal French traditions, and they try to cope, with European regulations. So when you talk about KYC procedures or obligations, which are absolutely key to what we are talking about here, when you talk about blockchain activities, the first problem for a regulator is the identity of the parties which are involved in a transaction. Yeah. That's the problem number one. So maybe, don't know to what extent people here are accustomed with blockchain technology, but this is the number one issue, is for the blockchain, in the blockchain activities. So, let's take Bitcoin, which is the number one today in the world blockchain technology. You are supposed to remain anonymous. If you want to be anonymous, you are anonymous because the only way to identify you on the blockchain is by your public key. And the public key is not a name, is not an address, is just a series of numbers. And on the blockchain as such, there is no authority that can make the link between the public key and your identity. Which is, for instance, if you take electronic signatures, because it resembles electronic signatures, but it's not the same. Because when you use an electronic signature in Europe, same in the United States, by the way, because the regulations are very similar, there is always an authority somewhere that make the link between a nickname that you would be using with an electronic signature, because you can sign with a nickname, but there is always an authority somewhere able to make the link between the nickname and your real identity for prosecution, etc. Doesn't exist in the blockchain as such. And you can add a KYC procedure, obligation up to it, if required by certain regulations.
Which does happen.
Exactly what's happening. It's exactly what's happening. Is that when you have the trading platform, Bitcoin platforms, and where you can exchange Bitcoins for euro, dollars, and the other way around, in the beginning, those platforms were not regulated. So no KYC required, etc. And so the America, Europe, when they realized what was going on, they say, no. You need to identify your people. Why? I'm not a bank, I'm not a payment institutions, I'm not that. Okay, that's a problem. So let's say that you are a payment institution. We take it for granted that you are a payment institution. So by certain fictions, mechanism, those platforms were assimilated in France, Germany, Luxembourg, certain countries were assimilated to payment institutions, which are regulated, which are required to apply KYC, which are required to identify their customers.
I'm sorry, who doesn't know what KYC means?
Know your customer.
It means know your customer. You all know that, right? Okay. Sorry.
So you need to know your customer when you deal with financial services, when you deal with banking applications or activities, when you deal with payments. You need to know your customer because you need to prevent money laundering.
Right. So on the ground, Jones, then how does that look?
Yeah, just a quick one. I think the KYC issue in Africa is actually overplayed. Yes, there is an issue, but then it's not as much as it has been documented. And here is the reason why. We already know that mobile penetration in Africa is very high. And now regulation in Africa, most African countries require the mobile network operators to KYC their subscribers. So if you have countries where mobile penetration is 83%, which is the case in Ghana, East Africa approaching 100%, etc., all those people are KYC'd or can be KYC'd.
By definition of having an account.
Exactly. And some of them already have bank accounts. And when it comes to ID, some may not have passports, but they do have voter ID cards, which double up as national ID cards, and those can be used as KYC documents.
Do you think that mobile carriers should be, or payments companies, should be looking at, that use the backbone of mobile carriers, should they be looking to position themselves as banks?
As?
Banks.
I think that's already happening because if you look at mobile money, I see it as more a tool for banking than payments because, as I said previously, you have issues with who is going to pick up the cost when it comes to using it for e-commerce. So you transfer money into somebody's wallet. The first thing they're going to think about is taking it out as in cash before they can spend it. Although the mobile money networks are connected to some merchants, everywhere they go, they have to pay something to use it as a form of payment. So as a form of payment, no, they're reluctant to use it. But then when it comes to banking, they're very happy to use it. And we see other products developing on the back of that, like microfinance products, insurance products, etc. And of course, you can transfer money directly from your mobile money wallet into your bank account. So if you have it.
So Damien, I mean, you were saying that you weren't getting any traction in Mali, okay? So have you looked at these other models that you can leverage sort of into instead of being just simply the wallet and the sort of the payment foci?
No.
Focus?
No, what I say is that to continue on what was said, regarding the Bitcoin platforms, that's true that the regulators asked them to become regulated, but most of them became agents of payment institutions, not payment institutions by themselves. In France, there is none. And those who were servicing the Bitcoin platforms were, like us, were facing the reality. And the reality was that farmers from Italy were doing businesses on our French platforms of Bitcoins. Why? Why should you have a farmer in Italy on a platform in France? So you have to tell.
Did you have good rates?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
No, you may be in danger as a payment institution. The likelihood to lose your license may be very high if you don't tell the regulator what is going on. Why? So, for example, I received twice the threat to be hacked. Okay, as a CEO of a bank. As a CEO of a bank, usually you receive calls. The one I received, for example, it's not a call; it's an email from Rex Mundi. a hacker who said, I will hack you next Tuesday unless you send me 20,000 bitcoins in euro. So, so my question now is, how couldn't you prevent the mafia and the hackers to use bitcoins? Because as a consequence, we had to stop servicing Bitcoin marketplaces in France.
How do you stop the mafia and crooks from using cash?
Well, you said that it was traceable. You said it would be transparent. It would be a wonderful world. I trusted you. And I was the first in France to serve Bitcoin marketplaces such as Premium, which is #1 in France.
Well, I think you were listening to what people were saying about the future of programmable money, because Bitcoin itself, you can track it forensically. You can. It just takes a lot of resources. You know, the federal government can trace Bitcoin. You probably can't. You know,
we are too small.
Yeah, there are a few hackers in the world who can trace Bitcoin. You probably can't. I know I can't. I don't think Anne can. I don't think. She can do a lot of stuff, though. I don't know about Anne. But
After the first panel, I can't do anything.
There's some hackers that can do it.
yeah, there are people out there who can do it. But I think Damien's point is, Damien's issue is that he's not one of those people. And yes, that exists out there. I don't, like, again, Bitcoin to me is proof of concept. Whether it's here in 5 years, doesn't matter.
I like what was said. I like very much what was said in the first panel. I just wanted to tell you more about the reality. I just have to manage a startup.
You do sound bitter, by the way.
Yes, because...
Oh, lemon way? Is that why? Bitter?
No. It works well. But we have to make profit, so we are in the real world. We are not dreamers. We have to make money. Otherwise, we'll never be able to develop a Pan-African model. Mm-hmm. So I looked at the other models, because the question was, did you look at the other models? In fact, they are closed loop. I mean, not closed loop, but mobile operator like Orange Money, who are offering to their own customers their solutions. So our solution, which is agnostic in terms of phone operator, is better, I think, and is cheaper. But there are so many ways to do arbitrage. For example, you know that our competitor, Orange Money, in Mali, is facing arbitrage from people who are spending their days to do cash-in, making money because they do cash-in for others, and cash-out, etc. So many ways, I mean, so many times they make a little money at the end of the day. This is one of the reasons why Orange Money amount managed, transferred in Mali represents 15% of the GDP. 15. Which is, again, stupid. We know that it's because of arbitrage operations. How can you... So you see, it's all a question of about control. We will go to Africa much quicker if only we could better control the local operations. So here again, we are not dreamers. We are just facing reality. The reality is that it's very hard to be in control of operations when you are dealing with money in Africa.
Well, that's a very good argument for a decentralized environment. But that being said, I think, Jones, you want to add to that?
Yeah. Now, the problem I have with all the other money or the remittance companies is they recognize, everybody agrees that there are problems on the ground, yet when you put out solutions out there, you're trying to put a solution that works in Europe in Africa where it doesn't work, and then you turn around and say it's not working. Of course, it's not going to work. That is a generic product you are trying to force into a situation that doesn't work. And that's the problem we have. So if you have business models that are based on other cultures or other environments where it works, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can put that and put it in Africa where it will work. You have to look at the situations on the ground and develop products that meet those needs. Mm-hmm. And there are products in Africa that work. The only problem is that they lack scale. And of course, without scale, you're not going to be making money. So that is why we need to get to a place where you move away from this fragmented market, have a service focused on Africa and delivering specific products for that market.
Do you think an African company is best suited to do this?
Yes.
Yes, I agree. You need scale. So that's why I was answering that the Mr. Borlo said we want a solution not coming from Africa, from America. In fact, the best solution for Africa will be the ones existing already in China or in America, where the scale is big enough so that Africa can benefit from the savings.
I think there are two different things being said there.
Yeah.
It sounds like there are two different things being said.
I would say that, for example, we're a global payments scheme, but we have a platform in the cloud, but our local markets are run by local business leaders and local entrepreneurs who have their own profit opportunities. So we do a partnership with them. So there's no way, as a global representative, I could be knowledgeable in each market, or I could have a relationship with each central bank, or I could know what are the electric companies to work with first, or be on a first name basis with all of the telco CEOs. That isn't, it's not possible. And mobile is now, when blockchain is coming up, these things are happening in a way that you have to really work with the trusted parties in those markets. Absolutely. And you're absolutely right about scale, and there's a lot of talent, and there's a lot of really impressive solutions right now out there across the markets. And by the way, Damien, you may not be upset that you're not making money yet, but 1 million accounts in Mali is something that we should all congratulate you on, because that's a big deal. That's a big accomplishment. I don't think MTN has been able to reach that in South Africa, right? So, really, good job.
Thank you.
So, it's something.
It was done. Well, what was interesting is that it was done with very little money, because we are a startup. So it means that the solution meets the market.
Solution.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were much cheaper than the competitor. But I like very much the idea that we need scale. Therefore, it's a global market. Why don't we give Africa all the technology and the saving, the scale economies coming from big solutions?
That's interesting, Thibault. From a legal perspective, how would you clear the way for technology transfer between France and Africa?
What technology are you talking about? Blockchain technology? Other technologies?
I'm talking about payments, blockchain. Whatever you think adds to this conversation.
First of all, it depends if you talk about open source technologies or proprietary technologies.
Well, you don't need technology transfer for open source so much. It's more about with the fintech community here in Paris, say, just for instance. What do you see as being central to allowing a scenario that Damien was just painting, where you sort of airlift French technology into a position in Africa, in different parts of Africa, which allow local, like say Kenya would have an infrastructure, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, allow them to then build on that technology, either in partnership or without partnership with you, and then move forward locally?
It's a never-ending question, the transfer of technology. It depends on the strategy you want to follow. There is no one answer to the question.
What do you, okay.
Do you want to transfer a technology or not? Yeah.
Pick a few applications first, do it by application, because then you can drive the focus, right? Technology for a certain use case.
And then you have to look at those pain points, like you were saying earlier.
Is it right? There's a big theme across Africa right now for national identity cards that can also do payments, that can also serve as a deposit account. In the OA community, that's a big conversation going on, and I would assume there's a big connection between France and OA, right?
Interesting. Okay. Moving forward. So now let's clear up this line between Bitcoin and payments. They are in fact. Bitcoin could be considered a payment rail. But it's a value rail. It's not really a payment rail. It's used,
It's currency.
In Japan, only in Japan. So, but it's it has other iterations and other kinds of descriptions in other countries. So, let's go to blockchain for a second, Thibault, since I know that you know a lot about the blockchain. So, do you think that the blockchain rails themselves could be used, or do you think that there are other assets that can be used in the payment scheme that allow some sort of evolution of the space in a more timely way?
I'm not sure I will answer directly the question. I will do like you, you know. I will answer what I want to answer. And, sorry, I'm
Everyone
teasing
does
you.
that
I'm
to me.
teasing
It's
you.
okay. Everyone does that
I'm just
to me.
teasing you. And because, you know, I'm a lawyer here, you know, so I'm talking about legal stuff. And the thing that many people try to avoid when talking about Bitcoin, blockchain, etc., is governance. Governance and regulation. Regulation is just part of it. The word regulation is like cryptocurrency. It's a bad word.
You stop saying it.
And it's rude. And but let's take the word governance. Governance is a good word. It's positive. And that's maybe the number one problem. Maybe it's the number one problem today. Let's face it. You know, 3 days ago, there was that now famous attack on Ethereum.
The DAO. Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yes, the DAO.
And wow, that's bloody interesting for me as a lawyer because, you know, we've been saying over the last 3, 4, 5 years that, no, more than that the code is low, you know, and that's exactly what happened to, to the Ethereum blockchain. Yeah, the code is low.
It was
I use the code. And I pump up more than 50 million euros, but I just use the code, and the code is low. Wow, and that's so interesting that the guy who did it, we don't know who the guy is, but he sent a letter. A guy sent a letter, to the community, say I did it, and if you want to take my money back, I'm gonna sue you.
Audience has to know this.
That's the first time in history that a thief say, if you want to sue me,
admit it.
No, if you want to catch me, I'm gonna sue you.
Because he can win that case. He can win that case. The DAO, for those of you who don't know, is a distributed autonomous organization that did a crowdfund. Huh? Decentralized. I'm sorry. Some people tell me not to say decentralized sometimes, and I start saying distributed, and then it's decentralized autonomous organization. And the premise behind it, just not to get too technical, is that it's a platform that people can build on using a currency called Ether, a digital currency. And if you develop on this platform, then you will get rewarded in this Ether. So Ether is like Bitcoin for those of you who don't know. Now, part and parcel of the DAO, the DAO, is the smart contract portion of it, which is where Ethereum claims its strength. Now, in this smart contract, there was some kind of clause. You're the lawyer, but I know that there's some kind of clause in there that said, basically, you know, if you can break this, you own it. And the guy broke it, and he took about 60...
He didn't break anything.
Well, he took it.
No, he didn't break anything. He just used a loophole in the code.
A loophole in the code, right.
So it's part of the code.
In the smart contract.
It's part of the code.
That's
so if the code is low, what he did is legal. He's right.
Yeah, and so he
but
got...
The answer is that the code is not the law.
How much?
That's you know, we've been intoxicated over the last month over the code is low. The code is not the law. That's as simple as that. The code is not the law. Behind a smart contract or a DAO, there is always a contract or a legal mechanism which is pre-existing. Sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it's not explicit.
So the lawyers like you have to write it?
That's what people forget. Law is everywhere. It's like the air.
But the lawyers like you have to write it because
a smart contract or DAO is just an execution of something which was agreed on consciously or unconsciously by people before. And that's it.
So the lawyers
the code
who
is
know,
not the law. It will never be the law.
But the lawyers who know how to code or know something about coding like you have to then step up and write these smart contracts. Are you that layer that allows this to work? Because that's important when you talk about France, EU, Africa, anywhere. You know, moving information, moving value from place to place. Those contracts are bloody important. They're the most important thing, really. So the DAO struck at the heart of all this value transfer around the world, at least with Ethereum. So what do you say? I mean,
the guy is just a thief.
Oh, but fair enough. But he's a thief who's pretty bold, and you know,
he's just a thief.
As Damien would say, he's arrogant.
For selling people. Period. As a lawyer, you know, it's very easy. I'm not the FBI, but that's what the FBI would think, you know. But somebody has to lodge a complaint, which is not that easy because the people are feeling so intoxicated by the idea of the code is low that there is some sort of collective humiliation around that. So that the only solution now is, this is amazing, that when you read this, that the only solution to respect the famous code is low principle would be to steal the guy again back using the same loophole. Right. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. No, that's just the guy is a thief. That's
I can almost guarantee someone's trying to do that right now.
Come on, he stole.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's lots of thieves out there.
Sorry to say that, guy, for the,
you want to add something?
Crypto things fans, but, that's the way it is.
Okay, well, we're going to, I think it's time for Q&A, is it? Is it time for Q&A? I believe it's time for Q&A. So do we have any questions from the audience? Not one question? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so you mentioned that there's a changing landscape when it comes to KYC in Africa.
Can you just start again, Jonathan, with the mic, please?
Yeah. So you mentioned that there's a changing landscape for KYC in Africa. One of the big aspects being the fact that when people go to telcos, they're getting KYC'd and before they get their phone number. How would you sort of leverage this information to have an updated KYC mechanism throughout Africa?
Leverage it as a company?
Yeah.
Well, for us, these things are already being created. There are companies out there who have already walked the walk. So for us, we're not going to recreate this. We will just work with them, work with existing institutions. Because as Damien said, it's very difficult trying to do all of this yourself. If you don't take time, you spend all the money trying to build infrastructure on the ground. Instead of working with existing systems to deliver the service. And for us, if somebody else has already performed the task of KYCing the customers, then we rely on that.
And I would say that, if I could add that, those companies that have spent the money and done the time doing that KYC they have an asset. It's having that makes them a really good marketing partner. Either they can be the direct issuer, creating the consumer accounts and funding them through the sources that they have, or they can become a marketing agent for a financial institution. And you have to be flexible by country as to what their laws are for how you can do that. Some you can do, a telco can be an issuer so that they can hold funds. And you can do it through the prepaid account, you can do it through the postpaid account, you can do it through a wallet. Right, depending on what the laws are. But having them done that work, that's leverageable asset for them. They can monetize that in some type of financial relationship, either directly to the consumer or in conjunction with a bank, with something we call bank light. So that way you can tick the box with the central bank saying that they've got the financial institution there.
Yes.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one to Thibault. When we talk about blockchain, everything is decentralized, and actually there is no one single authority you can turn against in case your money is lost. So, whereas for the bank, you can always claim, against the bank, and you are insured, etc., etc. So, isn't that a big thing? I mean, not to have one single authority to sue in case of problems. And the second question to Anne, but maybe I'll let you answer first.
No, that's true. It's a problem in terms of European regulations because it's irreversible payment by bitcoins. You cannot claim it back, which is possible for credit card payments or wire transfers. You can, because there are regulations that make it mandatory for a bank or a payment institution to reimburse under certain conditions the payer. It's not possible because the technology doesn't make it possible. Other blockchains could make it possible. It's just the way that blockchain was designed. But there are solutions for this. There are solutions for this. You can create some side chains or certain third parties that can be intermediaries between the payer and the beneficiary. So
Can you go through
that
side
you're going to be
chains?
paid when you receive the goods and the services.
Can you just explain side chains to some of the people who don't understand what that is?
It's just as an extension, if you want, or a chamber, sort of chamber, parallel to the blockchain, where you can agree on certain types of transactions, which are not actually depending on the blockchain itself. You can isolate certain transactions on side chains, and where a third party, you know, the famous horrible third parties we're talking about, the banks, etc., they are back. You know why? Because we need them from time to time.
Okay, thank you. My second question to Anne. So you're a global payment company and you're in the cloud. So how do you manage when the regulator says, I don't want any data of my customers hosted in the US or wherever, I want my data locally?
Right. Well, we start with the issuer owning the HSM, and so their PIN authentication is going to be done locally. Yeah. And if they want to have their merchant data local, then we can design something for them for that, because frankly, I don't want to put all these micropayments, in San Antonio rack space, right? It's expensive. So if they want to do that, we can design that. It's just that then you have the challenge of, do they have service in their country that can give them the level of availability that they need? So we try and always say yes to the government anytime, that we can. And if we can't, then we ask them for help with the solution. But, the good news is tech is pretty flexible these days. So, yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. I think it's you. Yeah.
Yes, it will be for David, for Guermonprez. It's quite surprising as an entrepreneur to say what you are saying. Before going to Mali, you already knew Orange was there. I'm quite surprised that you was surprised by the competition, and knowing what you have already seen in Mali. Then why you are going to Senegal then? Why you didn't take the lesson from Mali then, and maybe do something else or go somewhere else? Because Orange, they are already in Senegal. They are almost all in all the countries you are targeting.
It's like the people I've heard. I was dreamer. I thought that it would work. Okay, it worked from a commercial point of view. I still believe in Africa, so we will launch 10 countries, the EU EMA, because you can passport your license. As soon as you have a license in Dakar, Senegal, you can use it in several countries. Perhaps I'm too demanding on Africa and regarding the return on investment, because it's very easy in Europe, where we are multiplying our activity by 4 every year. So I recruited 70 people in less than 1 year. It's so easy, because we just came at the moment where all these platforms were needed regulation. So I'm very pleased today, because I heard so many initiatives regarding payments that they will all need KYC and they will need to be regulated, and I'll become the third party you were speaking about, providing or what the banks do not want to provide, because you said the third party, the bankers will come back. In fact, they don't.
I didn't say the bankers.
No, not yes. They are not coming back because they paid so much fine regarding compliance issues. They will never issue millions of payment accounts to make so little money. So they gave us the business. It's funny to see that, in fact, our success is a surprise in Africa, where nothing existed, and a surprise in Europe, where we were expecting the banks who did not come because they were afraid of compliance issues and fine.
Interesting. Okay, anyone else have a question or a comment? So in this panel, why don't I just let each panelist sort of have a closing remark about where you find yourself at this stage and what's next for Bolero.
Sure. If it's okay, I'm going to share where we are as it relates to blockchain.
Okay.
Is that okay? So, as you can tell, I'm an old banker, so you all can say all those things you want. I'm an old banker. Bitcoin's a little scary for me because we're in the payment era, but blockchain is really, really enticing. And so we're venturing out in a few areas first. We're working on rewards and loyalty as a great way for us to create new revenue and looking at doing rewards and loyalty with blockchain. I like this because I think we can do instant redemption. There are certain things that the technology can enable, and I think it's a good way for us to move forward in a way that isn't going to scare off any central banker. Because remember, the first thing I'm doing is going to a central bank and building trust, and you start talking blockchain too much, if they then transfer in their mind that to their fear of something else, then it's best that I don't do that. So rewards and loyalty are one. There's something that's coming up right now that we're working with where blockchain is being used as the way to hold someone's identity, specifically doing this with refugees. As we're launching in Jordan, there are a lot of refugees, and so we're working with the United Nations and some blockchain companies on that, and that to me is a real killer app, and I think it's a way for us to learn together, and it's I think it beats iris scanning, so I think that's great. So it's just figuring out how can we pull some of these applications together. Longer than in our roadmap is to figure out how we can use a distributed network of blockchain, how we can possibly do automated. We already do automated settlement where we calculate who earns what when, right, at the time of authorization. But maybe we could get to the point where we can do automated clearing as well. So, for me, that's a roadmap of maybe 18 months, but in the meantime, I think we can have some good revenue generating use cases with blockchain that we can learn and integrate into as we move along.
I happen to know the company very well that Bolero is working with in terms of loyalty, and I really respect them, and I think you guys are going to do some pretty interesting things. Thibault, how about you? Closing comments?
For once, France will be a front runner in tech regulations and with the blockchain, because the next month will be very interesting in that sense, because as it was raised during the first panel, there are now new regulations in France that actually relate to blockchain and for very specific applications of the blockchain and the so-called mini-bon, but it's going to be broader than that, because last week at the Parliament, the French Parliament, a new amendment was adopted that enables the government to legislate on the blockchain in more general terms for non-listed financial services. And so that's interesting because regardless of the kind of application we're talking about here, first, the blockchain is defined legally as a distributed and decentralized ledger. So there is a legal definition of blockchain. Big blockchain doesn't need a shit, excuse me to say so, but it's just a word. There is no legal definition. There is a legal definition. First time, as far as I know, worldwide, a legal definition of blockchain that exists in France. Whoa! And
it is a big deal. It's a big deal.
And secondly, when you want to say, okay, we're going to use a blockchain technology to register in an irrevocable way, legally binding way, something which is registered on the blockchain, you need to define the conditions of the blockchain. So you need to sort of certify what a good blockchain is supposed to be. And that's very interesting because is Bitcoin a good blockchain for the future French laws? We don't know. Maybe it's going to be private blockchains, but not public blockchains that can be used. So we're going to have that debate on the so-called good blockchains, if any, of course. But for the legislator, it's going to be the first time, for a regulator, that this question will be on the table. Good or bad blockchains?
Okay, fair enough. So Jones, you're in Africa and in the UK. What would it take for you, what would you like to see from France if you were to consider partnering with any of these wonderful people here who are from France and from Paris? What do you need to see to make that connection?
I think being in the UK, we benefit from PSD2, which is the Payment Service Directory, which opens up the market for us. So we already...
Could you explain that to some of the people out there? Because that's actually really key that you said that. And interesting, Thibault is sitting right next to you when you said it. So please explain what the program is.
So in Europe, previously running the Payment Service Directive 1, which basically allowed payment institutions to passport their services across Europe. And it had some challenges with the new PSD2. With the new PSD, which is called PSD2, it tries to remove those limitations, make the market freer, reduce interchange costs. So when it comes to payments, create a level playing field and make sure that different countries are not charging different rates. It just creates a better integrated market, trying to harmonize what is happening across Europe, which is a great initiative. So regardless of where you are based in the EU, you benefit from the same regulation. And for me, because it's principle-based, it allows you to operate within some boundaries, but gives you the leash, basically. So long as you don't go beyond those boundaries, you're fine. Yeah. So coming back to it, the introduction of PSD2 makes it possible for us to be here, and we intend to be because we do have our passport in, and France is one of the countries that we intend to operate from. In fact, we intend to operate from all of Europe. Of course, including the US and Canada, and we've got licenses in those countries as well. So the next stage is to scale up. As I've already said, scaling up is the big thing. If we are able to achieve that critical mass, then it becomes more viable. Focusing on specific countries makes the cost higher. But once you've already developed the technology and you scale up, then that's where you start seeing the real return. So for us, the next stage is to scale up across Europe, Canada, and the US, and of course, Sub-Saharan Africa. We're talking about Sub-Saharan Africa because we also recognize the fact that North Africa has attributes closer to the Middle East. So if you're going to develop solutions, you have to look at a market that have the same attributes, and that's our focus. We are pursuing a focus strategy, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Thanks very much. Damien, how would you like to close out?
In short, so you're absolutely right. The payment directive is a revolution because it happens at the same time where you have the mobile. And for 25 years, I thought that to innovate in financial services was to launch co-branded cards. In fact, I've been waiting for this time for so long. And I realize now I'm in the middle of a tornado. And my job is to provide tools to people like you to succeed, to protect the customers, to protect the merchants in this world of uncertainty. And I'm very glad to hear about blockchain because I know that I will be able to provide the tools you need to protect these people. I mean, the merchants, the consumers.
Okay. If there are no more questions or comments, thank you all for coming out tonight. It's raining, and you didn't have to come, but we do appreciate you being here. And thanks for welcoming us to Paris. Take care. Thank you so much, guys.